I'm Shane Doyle, Group Strategy Director in Core Media, and today we're really here to talk about clutter and what it means. What I'm going to be doing is taking a look at it from a strategy perspective, kind of a brand and marketing strategy perspective, as opposed to just media. And I'm sure Alan is going to talk to us about creativity and how that can help too, right? Yep. Excellent. Okay, so looking at clutter, and before I start, I just want to show you this. This is Zavadovsky Island. It is near the Antarctic. It's volcanic island. It's about the size of Inishmore on the Aran Islands, if you're familiar with that kind of landmass. And it is home to very little else other than 1.4 million penguins. So all of these penguins, 1.4 million of them, they all make, to our ears, pretty much the same noise. They're kind of saying all pretty much the same thing. So there's 1.4 million of them, but their entire intended audience with the sounds they're making is just one or maximum two other penguins, their partner and their offspring. So they're all in the same place, they all look the same, they all sound the same, and they're all effectively trying to say the same thing to that one audience. Now luckily for penguins, they have an innate ability to filter out all of the noise and hear the one message that's meant specifically for them. It'd be a lot easier for all of us in the room if people were penguins, but sadly, people are not penguins. But we seem to create the same amount of noise clutter in terms of what we're looking at. I just want to show you, I promise this is the only chart in terms of that I'm going to show. This is really just looking at why has this clutter situation happened. And you can see the green line there over the last 10 years is the rise in, I guess what you'd call advertising inventory. So if you look at the rise in social and digital, this is how quickly the amount of available advertising slots there are is growing. Absolutely exponential growth. If you look at the red line is demand. So actually what you're seeing is through that recessionary period, demand fell up as far as about 2013. And what that did is it hid us from this absolute behemoth amount of new inventory that there was because there was deflation, so we didn't notice exactly how much there was. But as you can see now, we have inflation again because demand is rising. So this last line is on a flat budget, your effective cut through. So what you're seeing from this, effectively, is you have to pay more money to buy the same stuff that is less useful than it was in the past. So actually just looking at the commercial reality of clutter, forget all the creativity and all those other elements, it's really, really important because we are paying more for advertising that is less useful if we just take a like-for-like approach with the amount of it that there now is. So what you'll see is the amount of hours that are consumed in terms of media, you can see the increase there up to 12.5 to about 16.5, 2007, 2015. And the amount of ads per day, about 140 to about 330. So a little bit more media we're consuming, vastly more ads that are being shown to us every single day. It means we have to be more efficient. It means that we really have to be relevant. No matter how good our copy is, we need to be at exactly the relevant point in those 350 ads or it's not really going to go anywhere. The other thing we need to be mindful of is looking at channels, communications channels. The light at the end of the tunnel is they're now also increasingly action or purchase channels. So we don't have to necessarily just go and take all the information we have and keep it in our heads and then go to a shop and buy a thing. We all know that's not necessarily what's happening. And there is also an opportunity in that when we get through the clutter. So where are we headed? And just before we talk about what we're going to do about clutter, it's useful to take a look at, well, what's likely to be the trajectory of how this goes? And if we look at, I suppose, the present, or maybe it's more fair to call it the recent past, you can see a situation where it's based on volume. And you know, there is nothing sinister about the fact that it's Vladimir Putin that you're seeing, I promise. But what we would try and do is literally take the same message and put it into as many media as possible. So it was one message, many media. and the focus was absolutely on volume. So you'd see the same message no matter where you were seeing it in order to really try and get that message across and cut through the clutter. And it actually created a lot of clutter because the focus is very much on volume. You're seeing things like Google talk about the zero moment of truth and the fact that our purchase decisions and how we're looking at things is changing. Coincidentally, Google seems to think it's Google that's changing how we buy things and Google searches. But what it's showing us is there are times of relevance when people are thinking about and can purchase our categories. So we're heading towards a near future, and it's starting now, of actually, rather than having one message in many media, we're having many messages in many media, because you have to be context specific. So you have to understand, not only is there the message I'm trying to get across, there's the situation that person is in when they hear that message. So rather than try and have one central piece of copy, we're looking at having different messages, but each of those messages is a little bit more tailored to the context that the person is in when they hear it. So context is effectively the focus. That's starting to happen now. It's not amazing. We're getting a little bit better at it in terms of understanding that we have to match the message to where it's being heard. What you're also going to see as people move on from this is a little bit more blocking, a little bit more curation, a little bit more selectivity. People are going to be able to block out more messages. If you look at the growth of 140 ads per day to 330 ads per day, and not only going in one direction, there is going to be a point where people are better able to cut a lot of these messages out. You're seeing the start of that with ad blocking, but and streaming of content, but that's going to increase. So it's not insane to look at a future where there will be one gatekeeper medium through which people will receive a lot of their messages, because the exponential rate of clutter will mean the return on investment in a lot of advertising will go down. People will get sick of it and be able to shut it out. So this is very far away stuff, but it's not crazy to think that there might be one central medium through people get a lot of their messages, and the focus is on individual, absolutely personalized one-to-one discrete messaging. But again, that's slightly Star Trek kind of stuff when we look at how far away that might be. So in the meantime, what do we actually do to try and cut through the clutter that's there? What can you do to try and get over and get your share in that 330 ads that people are hearing today? So there's three things I want to talk about: looking long term, being relevant, and using trial or utility. So starting off with looking long term, there is a book called The Long and Short of It. This is not the front cover. This is what you get when you Google image The Long and Short of It. I think that Binet and Field probably missed a trick by not having a rabbit with antlers and eagle's wings as the front cover. This is actually front cover. What Binet and Field actually did is they did a meta-analysis of the entire history of IPA effectiveness case studies and took a look at exactly what were the factors that were creating standout and creating efficiency and creating effectiveness. So we actually had one of the guys, Peter Field, over here for the launch of Marketing Multiplied last month, and actually it was great to chat to him about some of what he had found. And one of the things that stood out to me was the fact that long-term focused advertising, and that's advertising where the effect is intended to be over longer than a 6-month period, is 3 times more efficient than short-term advertising. So if you think about that, taking the time to plot out a long-term goal, think about the target, think about what's relevant for them, and think about building out a long-term message and mapping a program of work to try and get that across is more efficient than a short-term fire sale share grab and trying to fill a lot of content there. And it can feel sometimes the opposite way around. Oh, it's more efficient to just have a short-term message and get the sales in immediately. 3 times more efficient to look long-term. And that's a lot of what the team I'm involved in here do, is we look at the long-term goals and where people can actually get to them. You can find a huge amount of the clutter is created by short-term messaging and short-term hope to try and get as many sales as possible. And we're not trying to say there's no place for that, but again, one of the findings of Marketing Multiplied that Alan Cox and his co-writers put together was about 60%, if not more, of your spend should go on brand building, long-term messaging. And I guess it's a challenge to ourselves. When you think about what you do, can you hand on heart say more than 60% of your spend is going on that type of activity as opposed to the short-term type of stuff? Because that's the scientific recommendation.